And just like that, a few strums of the guitar, a couple plucks of the string, and instantly I'm back. I'm back to this world. What is it about the strumming of a guitar that puts you in such a mood? And that's exactly what this game does to you. It puts you in a mood. It sets a tone that's kind of indescribable, but you know that it's unique. And the minute that I put this into my PlayStation, I knew, just like the previous game, that this was going to be something unique and something that would stay with me.
I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, and I fear no evil because I'm blind to it all. In my mind, my gun, they comfort me, because I know I'll kill my enemies when they come. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell on this earth forevermore. Said I walk beside the restore my soul, but I can't walk on the path of the right because I'm wrong. No, I can't walk on the path of the right 'cause I'm wrong.
What are you doing, kiddo? You really gonna go through with this?
I'm gonna find, and I'm gonna kill every last one of them.
You know, it took me a while to get through this game, and I did that purposefully. I didn't want to rush it. But this is more than just a review. Maybe it's a deconstruction of what I experienced in this game. But this is my official review of The Last of Us Part 2. In many ways, and for so many reasons, it's hard to describe how you feel when you're playing The Last of Us Part 2. And in some weird way, maybe you shouldn't describe it. Maybe it's something that you should feel on your own. If lucidity and catharsis could be a video game, it would definitely be this game. The original Last of Us was a benchmark game. Really, it changed the industry in terms of overall complexity, storytelling, narrative. I mean, it just really hit a tone with audiences, and it was, by all accounts, a perfect game. Definitely. Even the ending was just perfect, and I'm not going to spoil anything, of course, but if you have played the game, the original, you'll remember that ending, which was so true to human nature and what many of us would have done, given the gigantic theme in the game and how important Ellie was to the world. Having made that decision, it is just in line with human nature. That final level alone, that final mission, if you didn't have parental instincts before, as a result of this game, you certainly did.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm going to throw around words like masterpiece several times in this review, deconstruction, whatever you want to call it, but it obviously is too small a word for the original game. And that's saying a lot in this industry. Let's just face it, the original Last of Us was a game that was very hard to follow and very hard to live up to as well. And because of it, a lot of talk was being kind of floated around on whether or not this game should exist. Well, I'm here to tell you it absolutely should exist, and it was a natural progression because of a singular conversation that both Ellie and Joel needed to have, and that's the embodiment of this game, and that is the sole purpose of this game. And everything else is just pure, amazing narrative and storytelling. This is obviously a brutal game in so many ways, both literally and figuratively. It is going to kill you in terms of your emotions, and that's just part of this world. You know, very similar to shows like The Walking Dead, often the horrible things that happen are not done by the zombies, or in this case, the infected. It's what humans do to other humans and how they react in post-apocalyptic worlds, and this is just part of this narrative. Every minute of this game is an emotional tug of war. There is something inherent in our nature, our need for revenge and reciprocity, and that's really one of the kind of large themes here, and it's done so well. As I was playing this game, I felt those emotions when things happened, and certain horrible things happened in this game to our beloved characters from the first game. We wanted that. We had that desire to go out and seek revenge and just feel better about going out and hurting people because of what happens in the events of this game. But little by little, we start to realize that maybe we're not doing the right thing. And maybe inside of all of us, we have this awful dark side to satisfy things that we can't come to terms with. And that is one of the driving forces of this game, and it is wonderfully done. It is a absolute conundrum. Every minute of this game, you are questioning what you're doing, or at least if you're not a sociopath, you definitely are. There is absolutely no black and white in this game. It's all gray, and you're definitely going to realize it about this game very quickly on in this narrative. Now, from a technical standpoint, and I'd like to get that out of the way because that's probably the easiest thing about this review, the game is absolutely gorgeous, and it runs very well. If you played the original game, you'll know already how the game mechanics work, so getting into this world, again, in terms of the gameplay mechanics, is very easy. Whether it's crawling through spaces, trying to find cover in between dilapidated buildings or vehicles, hiding from enemies, doing stealth kills, all of that makes a return here, and in fact it's actually been more refined. The crafting here is fantastic, and if you'll recall from the first game, it was already spectacular. It wasn't bogged down by needlessly complicated mechanics, it was just perfect, and that makes a return here, and it is absolutely wonderful. I also noticed there's a lot more variety in terms of how you can take down enemies. You can go balls to the wall and just go straight on, Rambo style, and take out enemies. You can do stealth kills. You get pretty inventive, especially with the crafting mechanics, on how to prepare if you are going to assault a campsite. As you know, there are many factions in this game, very similar to the previous game. But again, they give you a lot of freedom here, and it doesn't feel as claustrophobic or restricted as perhaps the previous title did. But there's a reason for that. You have to remember that Ellie was just a little girl then. She's grown up, and let me tell you, she has turned into quite the stealth assassin badass. I mean, the things that she can do in this game often scare you. I know I got scared by this character a couple of times. Just how proficient she is at killing things. I mean, she rivals Solid Snake. It's unbelievable, the skill set that she has learned since the last game. And I guess it makes a lot of sense. That's a natural progression. This is a very hard and difficult world, and you have to know how to survive. Ellie clearly has learned those skills over these years. I also have to admit that in this game, the tension is really amped up because the AI is superb. They are not just standing around static waiting for you to pick them off. You have to be very careful. They use coordinated attacks, and anytime you hear a whistle, you know that reinforcements are coming. It is really crazy, the combat in this game. Now, If I only have one criticism, it has to do with the tempo of the music. Whenever you clear out an area or clear out an area of bad guys, the music changes, and you know in that moment that nobody is around or there's no danger. And I kind of thought that was a misstep because it does diminish some of the tension just a little bit. You know you've killed everybody off and you can just explore because of that tone or the change in music. And I thought that was kind of a drawback because I like the tension in this game. I like when I was exploring that I had to be very careful and not make too much noise because I never knew what was coming. Once that music changes, you kind of know you're alright, which was kind of a downside. I also like that there's a couple new enemy types in terms of the infected. I'm not going to spoil this for you because it really scared the piss out of me, and I actually dropped my controller one time. But when you're in these buildings with the cordyceps just kind of building up, be very careful, guys. Because I have to say, it really scared the piss out of me. Fortunately, the jump scares are not cheap, and they actually make a lot of sense. And that's what makes them all the more effective and really scare the crap out of you guys. The setting is also very important too. One of my two favorite locations in the United States is definitely the Oregon territory as well as California, because we do see Santa Monica. And one of the things I really loved about this game is the scale. It was just breathtaking once you enter these cities and you just see how much of nature has been taken back as a result of this horrible plague. It is absolutely stunning, guys, especially when you visit the various locations, because each one of them have this kind of color tempo, which lets you know that it's a different environment. Of course, the cordyceps and this outbreak has affected the world, so to speak. We never really got a sense of how widespread it was before, but this game definitely answers that question. So now let's get to the obvious. There is also a lot of controversy with this game. In many ways I can see how and why, but I think it is a little bit misguided for obvious reasons. Now, you do play as two main characters, both Ellie and Abby. I'm not going to talk about Abby too much because I want you to experience her. I will say this though, your alliances and the way you feel about these characters, both Ellie and Abby, will go back and forth. And that's really a microcosm of the emotions that you'll feel in this game and what it's trying to convey to you. I both hated Ellie and loved her, and I both hated Abby and loved her at the same time. And that is the brilliance of this game. It shows you the perspective of both narratives and the motivations of both these characters. Remember that conversation that I said that Ellie and Joel had to have? That plays a huge role in this, and it's exactly why this game needed to be made. Whether you agree with it or not, philosophically, the events of the last game and the decisions that you made in the previous game have consequences, and they came back in a big way. And that story had to have been told, and this is why I say this game was absolutely necessary. Unfortunately, just like every big game, there comes expectations, and unfortunately for many fans, if it's not what they want, they start bitching about it, basically. And the controversy seems to stem around Abby and some kind of perceived hidden agenda. Now I'll be the first to admit that this game is really in your face about certain topics. But so what? What's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with trying to bring awareness and attention to a topic that is part of life. And we just have to come to terms with that. Now, Abby, initially when I met her, or when we do meet her in the game, I have to admit she was a little bit jarring, and a lot of it had to do with her design. And everybody who has played the game and has gone through it once understands exactly what I'm talking about. But again, you're kind of misinterpreting what this game was trying to convey to you in terms of the overall narrative. And once you get past her physical design and really start to know Abby, get her backstory, and understand how this all ties together, you start to get it. You start to understand her as a character and how complex she is. Her physical appearance is really a physical manifestation of her motivations, of her pain, her desire for revenge and reciprocity, which again is a very big theme in this game. And when you look at it in terms of that, and what is being presented to you in terms of the overall narrative, you start to get it. And little by little, that jarring initial introduction to Abby really goes away. And I think that's one of the brilliant things. You go in with a preconceived notion of what the agenda is here, or the perceived agenda is, and little by little it goes away because you start seeing the brilliance of the characters and just exactly what's going on and what's driving them. This game also has themes of anti-heroism. You definitely feel that in this game. I did not always feel like I was doing the right thing. In fact, there were many times in this game where I just wanted to stop, pause the game, and think about what I was doing in the course of action I was taking. Even though the game funnels you into certain things, you stop yourself and start questioning. And I think that's one of the brilliance of the games, and probably by design, because you don't always feel like you're doing the right thing. And I've mentioned that before. Believe me when I tell you, and this may not be as much relevance if you're a complete sociopath, but everything you do in this game, you feel it. And you feel every death that you caused or by proxy caused in this game. I gotta tell you that there were times when I paused the game and took a couple hours off, and I started thinking about the horrible shit that I just did or caused. And that's what really sticks with you. The sad reality is that, very similar to real life, we all are kind of under the misconception that we're the stars of our own lives, right? We all think that we are self-righteous, we all think that we're doing the right thing and that we're the good guys. But this game kind of tells you and sticks a mirror to your face and says, listen, even though you think you're right, you're not. And you're not always a good person. It also very bluntly warns us about the dangers of being able to justify anything because of something that happened to you, some kind of personal attack, personal tragedy, or just because you think the world is really fucked up, and how you rationalize that to commit your own atrocities. Now, if you notice, I've shown a lot of footage of Ellie just basically killing people left and right. And I did that for a reason, because it does get offset somewhat by some of the slower moments in the game, some of the cutscenes. And the guitar in this game is a metaphor for a very important theme in this game that unfortunately does not get enough attention or recognition. And that's essentially, the guitar is a metaphor for self-reflection. Every time Ellie strums that guitar, or Joel would strum the guitar, it's a chance for them to self-reflect on everything that has happened, the decisions that they've made in this game, and that's why it's so important. It's probably the most important thing. If you recall, at the beginning of this review, Deconstruction, whatever you want to call it, I started with that guitar. I started with the strum and the strings and the mood that it puts you in, because those are the moments where you really self-reflect on this game and the experience that you had of everything that you did, everything that was done to you, what the world is now. And that's a very important thing in this game. And fortunately, you have those slow moments complemented by the dialogue, the motion captures. You really see each individual as a person, and that's one of the most important aspects of this game. The Last of Us as a series is not merely a video game. It's not merely interactive media, but rather a journey and an experience. It takes us to the very extremes of human nature, down to the deepest recesses of our darkest impulses, and it begs and pleads to shine a light on the beauty that we all possess, desperately attempting to appeal to our better angels. Very similar to the original game, this entry in the series is just beautifully and wonderfully captured. But there is a bit of a caveat to that experience. This game, again, is not something that you just experience and play. But the sequel to the original game is something that you do have to come to terms with. And very similar to real life and all its complications, sometimes it's about the only thing and the best possible outcome that you can ever hope for. This game does teach you a very sobering and uncomfortable reality for many of us. That sometimes the horrible things that happen to you, you have to come to terms with it, learn to let it go, and move on. And for all those reasons, the experience, the emotional journey that this game put me on, the first and the second one, this series will always have a special place in my heart for so many reasons. The Last of Us Part 2 is simply a masterpiece. Alright everybody, so that's my official, whatever you want to call it, for The Last of Us Part 2. As always, I thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next AGR'S Pop Culture Reviews.
A hot pile of garbage.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
How about that?
gross.
You love it. Every guy in this room is staring at you right now. Maybe they're staring at you. Or not. Maybe they're jealous of you. I'm just a girl, not a threat. Oh, Ellie. I think they should be terrified of you. See, I told you. They should be terrified.